Hi guys, welcome to another hobby vlog. During this one we're going to be looking at the 30k Space Wolf scheme. Now you can see I've already been working on Gregor the Fellhand. He's looking pretty good. I'm really pleased with this guy so far, and I really do like this grey scheme for the Space Wolves. I think it looks really good. It makes it look more like a more Viking-y rather than that sky blue. Now I did work on a sky blue scheme for my 40k Space Wolves, which look absolutely brilliant, but now I've started doing these 30k ones, I think everything's going to change to grey. I'm really pleased with how this has turned out. So during this video we'll pop him aside. We're going to be working on 30k Mark 3 armoured Space Wolf Sergeant here. I'm going to go through exactly how I've got the effects we've done with Gregor Fellhand, and we're going to get it looking really good and good enough to lead a squad into battle. Okay, so we've got all our paints and things out now, and as you can see we are ready to go. Now I've cheated a little bit with this one. As you can see, the base is already done. What I'll do, I'll go back and we'll do a video just on this style of basing, but you can do anything you want with these guys. Any sort of base will fit. Now what I've done is gone completely opposite to your norm for your Space Wolves, and I've gone with this deserty sort of effect, this wasteland style, purely because I want to show that they are out of their normal area, out in the middle of the galaxy fighting for the Imperium. Now I've also, as you can see, he has got a shade on there and he's gone grey. Now to get this effect I've used Mechanica Standard Grey as a base coat. I've actually used the spray can rather than the pot, but just as an example I'll show you here. So Mech Standard Grey as your base, cover the whole model, you're ready to go on to the next stage. Now the armour itself has been covered in Dawnstone. It's a really good grey and just brings that colour up slightly, and looks really effective, really nice sort of effective grey. All over the model. So that's that one done, and then the next stage is we've used the Agrax shade, covered the whole of the armour, gone over the whole thing with your wash brush, cover it all, try not to get any pooling, but if you do, don't worry too much because you can go highlight again with the Dawnstone straight over the top. But this adds a pre-shade to the model and we get it to this stage. Now we'll keep the Agrax shade out because we are going to need that a little bit later. So he's looking really good so far, I think. You can already see the shadings on there, and to be honest with you, you could probably get onto the table with this guy, and no one really would bat an eye. I know a lot of people like to see some colour on there, but you've got the shading in place, and you could probably play with this, and that would take no time at all to actually get that effect on this effect on the model, and it'd look really good. First thing we're going to do though is we're going to work on all the silver parts of the model. So there's a few. He's got his power sword here, or we could use that as a frost sword maybe. So we're going to do that silver. We've also got the plasma pistol just in his right hand here. He's got a bolt pistol as well, just in his holster on the side, and there's also a few bits and pieces just around the model that we're going to do silver, around the backpack, and he's got some magazines there as well for his bolt pistol. To do that, we're going to use this Citadel chainmail paint. It's a nice bright silver, but we'll go over the top of this with the Nuln Oil afterwards anyway to shade it, and it will bring that down a little bit. But I wanted it to be a nice and bright silver. These guys are fighting in the year 30,000 or around that sort of a time anyway. So they're not going to have fought in 10,000 years of war like the rest of the guys in 40k. So the silver we're going to apply with this the Army Painter small detail brush, as we've done in the past. Great brushes, nice to really get into those detail areas. I always like to use the detail brushes rather than any of the big standard brushes that any of the ranges do. Standard brushes for me are only really a base coat brush, just to get the colour on, the main level of colour on there that you want to get on. The Army Painter small detail brush is ideal for doing all the rest of your bits and pieces that you want on there. The chainmail, I've actually watered this down in the pot because it's such an old paint, and I tried to revitalise it a little bit and get it a little bit running again, because it was starting to glue quite a lot. So this is already ready to go. We don't need to use our palette as you would normally need to do with the Citadel paints. Do this and just take your time going over the whole model now, picking out all of those silver areas along the model. So you can see we're going to start off with this power sword here, or frost sword, depending on how we want to go down this road with it. So just take your time over the top. Now this is one of the extra bits that you can get on the Space Wolf sprues for 40k. And it actually looks quite effective, quite a nice looking sword, very Viking-like I think, and it's got these runes on the sword as well, which look really nice and fit really well within the fluff of the Space Wolves themselves. So I've used this one on this 30k model. For the purposes of the games, I'll probably just use it as a standard power sword, just for points wise. But it looks quite nice, and it does just finish off that sort of Space Wolf-esque style that you want to get for your models. You can see the silver's on this, and already it's starting to stand out. It's really, really bright silver. So I'll continue working on this silver, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the next stage. Okay guys, there we have it. The silver is now all applied onto all the areas of the model that we wanted to get it onto. You can already see this is looking quite smart. You've got his swords shining really, really nicely. You've got all these little silver bits just around the model. We did the weapon, the bolter, the bolt pistol that's just sat in his holster there, a couple of the magazines, and a few little tiny details just on the rear on his backpack, including some of the vents. So we'll leave that to dry now. It shouldn't take too long to dry. Just want to make sure it is completely dry before we move on to the next stage. Okay, so I've zoomed in a little bit for you now, just while we do the next stage. The next part of the model is the black that I'm going to use. To do that, I'm going to use this Army Painter matte black. It's a really nice colour, actually, a really nice black, and I do like to use this one a lot. So we'll pop it onto the palette just off the screen here, mix it with a little bit of water, just so we're not putting too much on there. We don't want to lose any of the detail with this. Not that we're doing a lot of areas with the black, but I do want it. Now the areas you want to try and get are just in the folds, the creases between the armour. You've got the fold here just in his sort of crotch area, and we're going to be doing the weapon as well. So we'll start off with the actual pistol itself. Just take your time with this, getting a nice even coverage just over the model itself. Try not to get into any of the areas that you've already painted. To put the paint on, I'm using the Games Workshop Citadel detail brush for this one. It's got a nice point on it, so I can just make sure I don't get it anywhere else. So I'll work on this, and then we'll come on to the next stage. Okay, so there we have it. We've got those black areas done now. Nice and quick and easy to get a really nice effective look on the model. You can see the pistol is obvious, but just in these creases it does just finish it off quite nicely, really, to get the black in there. So we've only had to do the two front pieces on this because the magazine there is the magazine's on his belt there, just hiding the other piece. So we've not had to go into there. Okay, so we'll just give this a couple of minutes to dry, and then we'll move on. Okay, so the black's nice and dry now. So what we're going to be doing is just a very small detail just on the rear of the model. We've got the holster for the bolt pistol and the straps around the magazines there. To do that, we're going to be using the Citadel base paint Rhinox hide. It's a really good good paint to it, you get a like dark leather sort of effect there. So you need to give it a really good shake, and then we're going to be mixing that just in the palette off the screen. Just get a little tiny bit on your brush, pop it onto your palette there, and just mix it with a bit of water, just to make sure we've not got too much. And you want a nice point on the end of your brush for that as well. So you can see I've not got very much on the brush at all. We'll just slowly go around the model, just on these areas here. Take your time not to get into any of the areas that you've already painted and into any of the silver areas, because you're going to be working very closely with those now. If you do, don't worry too much though, because you can just go back over the top of the silver and cover up any of those mistakes that you might make. So we'll work on this and then we'll move on to the next stage. Okay, so there we have it. We've got him finished, or the brown finish now, the Rhinox hide just applied onto these areas, just on the straps and the pistol holster there, and I think it's looking really good so far. Starting to really get this model to come together now. I'm really pleased with how he's going. So we'll just let that dry for a few minutes and move on to the next stage. Okay, so with the Rhinox hide now dry, we're going to be moving on to the Balthazar gold, just around a few of the areas. But just before then, we are going to use Screamer Pink just to get the handle of the actual sword there, because it's only a small detail, so we can get that done and the Balthazar gold at the same time. We don't need to worry too much. So to just apply the Screamer Pink, we are just going to use the Citadel detail brush again, just to get into these smaller areas just around his hand there, because we don't want to get any on any of the armour of the model. So I'll just quickly do this now. Okay, there we have it. We've got the Screamer Pink on there now. Nice, quick, easy detail, and it does just make that handle stand out from the rest of the weapon as well. It's only the only area that we're going to be doing that colour with. So the next step is the Balthazar gold. Again, we need to give this a really good shake, especially the gold. It seems to separate quite a lot from in the actual pot. It seems to separate out, and we do need to make sure that it's a really good mix in there. Though it is a really good colour, and it really gives the effect that we want on there. It gives sort of a darker gold finish to the model. So I'm going to open that up now and mix a little bit on my palette. Okay, so to apply this again, we're going to be using the Citadel detail brush to actually get it on there. And to start off, we are going to just do these the bits around the shoulder pads there, like these pauldron, just around the pauldron sort of thing. So again, just take your time going around the whole model. And just getting that little detail just on the gold. The gold, it goes on really nicely with this. You may need to have 2 coats, but just judge that as you go along. It is a really nice paint actually, if it's shaken up and you've mixed it correctly with the water. Don't want it too thin. So I'll work on these areas now, and then I'll come back. Okay, so there we have it. We've got all the gold now, all painted on, and it's gone on really effectively. I don't think I'll need to do another coat. I'll leave it for a little while to dry though, and have a look. And if it needs another coat, I'll pop that on there, and then we'll move on. Okay, so the gold's all now dry. It's looking really good. I'm really pleased with how this guy's going now. These shoulder pads are looking pretty sweet. The sword's coming together quite nicely as well. You'll notice I did do a couple of little details as well, just with the gold, just on the weapons, so I had a little bit something more just to the model itself, so it's not just like big blocks of colour. Got just those little details in there. And while we're on the subject of little details, one of the things we need to do is these runes and things, these hanging stone things on that he's got just on the bottom of his sword. And there's also a little skull just on both sides as well that we're going to do. To do that, we're going to pop a little layer of Xandra dust to start with, and then go straight over the top with Ushabti bone. Really, really good to just get a nice bone effect just on any of the models there. So just mix that off screen again on the palette with a little bit of water, just to make sure we've not got too much on the brush as well. And then just pop straight on there, just on these little hanging runes. Just take your time now. Try not to get any on the silver, but if you do, don't worry too much, because you can go straight over the top again with the silver at this stage, because we've not put any of the shades on the silver itself at the moment. Okay, so I'll work on that now, and then we'll move on. Okay guys, so that's everything done there. We've got the Ushabti bone on these little areas here. Didn't take very long at all to do, so we're ready now to pop a wash on. So to start with, we're going to go with the Nuln Oil, and we're going to cover all the areas we've actually painted today, actually, bar the sword itself, because we're going to put a blue glaze on there instead. So just using your Nuln Oil now, just go straight over the top, just with your wash brush, on top of all these gold areas and the handle itself, and straight away you can see there's a level of shading gone into there compared to the side. You've got it quite silver there, and then you've got those darker areas. So you can see all you need to do is just touch on top, not too much on the brush at all, and you get this shade appear straight away. If you do go over, don't worry too much, because you can, if you just look there, it's quite dark, just touch the brush on there and it sucks it back up. It's a great way of adding some shading into the models. This is, I can't recommend using these Citadel shades enough. There's a lot of other companies out there do make them though as well, all different styles and things. If you're into your modelling, I'm sure you'll know. But yeah, we'll pop it all over the weapon as well, just to dull down these silver areas that we've done, and also add the shade just around where we've worked today. Again, on the pistol and the holster, just pop it on the handle there to any of the gaps. And then we've got the magazine pouches at the rear as well. Go straight over the top there. See, I put a little bit much on there. Again, just touch it and just pull it back up, and you can reapply it somewhere else. So there we go. There's also these couple of little areas, and you've got to be careful with how much you're using on these, because we don't want it going too much onto the grey, because that area is already done as such. So you're just touching these areas that we've painted today. So a light touch with it is all you need to get this shade, to get the actual shade of Nuln Oil to go on there. Essentially, just touch it onto these areas. So there you have it. So that's the all the Nuln Oil on there. Now you'll notice as well, while I went around, especially the sword, I didn't actually go over the top of the Ushabti bone at all. That's because I'm going to pop an Agrax Earth shade, bit of Agrax Earth shade on there instead, just to make it go a little bit more brown rather than black that we had with the Nuln Oil. So you can see exactly the same brush, just giving it a quick wipe, straight over the top of there, straight over the top of there, and it just adds in that little bit of definition. Again, we're going to do the same thing just on the skull that's on his sword there as well. All you need to do is just touch it on a couple of times. You can see it's just dropped straight into the eye sockets there, and it's starting to look a little bit more natural rather than that big block of colour. So there you have it, that's those two shades applied. Now they're going to take a little while to dry, as shades always do. So we're not going to move on with any of the colours, other colours at this particular stage. But what we can do, we can now pop on the Gulliman Blue glaze just on the sword. So we'll do that now, even though we are going to revisit this in a little while with the plasma pistol. But what we'll do, we'll pop on the glaze on the sword because it's a nice quick effect. You'll see. All you need to do is just move from the bottom of the sword, and just paint straight up the top. Okay, so we'll leave that for now, and then we'll come back and revisit once all of those shades and glazes are dry. Okay, guys, so that's the shades and the glaze all nice and dry now. So that's all complete, and he's looking pretty good. There's obviously the few details left to do, head being the main one. But before we get onto that, we're just going to do this plasma pistol here. Now, to get a nice glowing effect, what I've done in the past is start off with like a light grey. So for this one, we're going to start off with the Arthurian grey from Games Workshop. So I'll just mix a little bit of that just on the palette off screen there, and then we literally just paint the area that we want this glow to go to essentially. So we'll paint the top of the plasma pistol here. Okay, so that's the first coat on there, so I'll give that a few minutes to dry. Okay, so that's the first and second coats on the plasma pistol now, just for the lighter area, the Arthurian grey. It's all on there now. What I am going to do while we've got this open though, is start the eyes. Now to do that, I'm going to use the Insane Detail brush, purely because it essentially is an insane detail that we're trying to do now. So you can already see that I've painted the areas black. Just into the eyes there, just so you've got like the dark areas around the figure's eyes. Now what you want to do is get as small a point as possible on your brush, no matter what brush you use. And all you're doing is going from the centre of the eye near the nose and pulling outwards towards the side of his face. You can see that's far from perfect. He's really big, bright white eyes now. But what we can do is wait for that to dry, and then we'll go in with the black straight after. Go around it and just shape that into more of an eyeball shape, and also at the same time just do a dot in the centre for his actual the centre of the eye as well. What that'll do, that'll make it the white or the Arthurian grey almost disappear. So we're not really going to have much of that left at all. But it'll just be at the edges there, and the black around it with the dark bit in the middle will look perfect, and it'll be good enough to play a game with. You don't really need to go in any more detail. Now if you don't want to do that and you just want to leave the areas of the eye black, do that as well. It's much easier and no one will notice. No one's going to get right down on the table and look that closely at your figures, especially when you just want to get a game in with them. So we'll leave that all to dry, and then we'll move on to the next stage. Okay, so we've given that a little while to dry now. Now what we're going to do is go straight into the eyes first, just because it's the smallest detail. I want to get that out of the way. So using one of your small brushes, for this I've got my Citadel detail brush. All you want to do is go around the eyes on the actual model itself and get it so that white area or that light grey area is as small as possible. And you can see I'm going in with the black with this, and I don't really care about going quite low down onto the model's cheeks, because we haven't even gone anywhere near this flesh yet, and that's why you really want to get this detail out of the way first. So there you go. Now you can see they're quite bright. You've got these white slits almost in the eyes. I'm not too worried about this at that stage, because we will put a little dot on just to make that sort of disappear a little bit. Now you can see I did get a little bit of the Arthurian grey just on the pistol earlier, so just taking that off as well while I had the black out. I'm just going to do a little bit more just on this eye here, because it does just come over a little bit too far. There we go. Okay, so that's the actual eyeballs themselves. Now to get the iris, the centre of the eye, you just want to, again, you can use a black, brown, anything you want to use really. You can really go into any colour you want with this. I mean, for me, I'm just going to use the black purely because I've got it out now and it's ready. So you want to try and get as smallest end as possible on the brush, and all you're going to do is touch that centre of the eye. That'll make it look a little bit more natural. Now, you don't want it to be round as such, because it'll look almost like his eyeballs are wide open and he's shocked, and that's the last one of the last things you want. It just doesn't look natural to try and get a round piece. So the best thing to do is just touch the centre there. Don't worry about getting it round. No, whenever you look at someone's face, you don't see the whole of their iris anyway. So there we have it. You just got there's two dark areas now, and you can see it's already broken up that big white slit that we had, and you've just got the whites in the corner of his eyes, which is ideal for what we need. The next stage, when we get onto the face, we'll be covering up all that black that we've added anyway. Okay, so the next little piece we're going to do, just while we're going to wait for that to dry, is we're going to add in the Guilliman blue glaze onto this plasma pistol to start getting that blue glow. Now to do that, we're not going to use the wash brush this time. Instead, I'm going to go in with the Army Painter small detail brush, just because it's a smaller area really, and we don't want to be getting this glaze everywhere. So just dip your brush in as much as you want. Try and get the bristles to be saturated essentially so they're nice and wet with this glaze. But then wipe a little bit off, and then just go straight in there with it. Now what you want to do is cover the whole area of this of the actual plasma pistol, as such the grey. So you want this whole thing to have. Okay, well, there we have it. What we might do, we might revisit that. We'll wait and see what it looks like when it's all dry. We might revisit it and just put a little bit more blue on the top there. But at the moment, you can see that you've got this darker area all the way around the edge with the light area in the middle, which is exactly what we want for the glowing effect on this pistol. So we'll leave that to dry, and then we'll move on after that. Okay, so we've given that a little bit of time to dry, and what you can see is, by magic, there's some tape appeared just on the shoulder pad here. Now what I've done, I've got a little bits of masking tape, and I've just masked off this area just so I can do the shoulder pad itself. Now what I'm going to use is a little bit of corn red, just to make a V shape. Now to help get that shape, I've used this tape, and all you need to do is just paint just over the top of this grey area. And the masking tape will help you get a nice straight line. Now it's not perfect by any means. You're not going to be able to put this on, paint over the top, and for it to magically make a nice perfect straight line for you. It's never going to happen. But what it does is get a good guide for you to get it so it's fairly equal on both sides. And then you can tidy it up afterwards. So we'll do this now. We'll paint in this V shape now. What we can do, we can pop a little transfer on there afterwards to finish off the squad marking. You can see there we've got like a triangle shape, an upside down triangle, or a V in red. So I'll leave that to dry. So that's all finished. The next stage is going to be his head, essentially. So it'll be the face and hair that we'll work on. So we'll give the model a little while to dry now, and then we'll come back and revisit the head of our Space Wolf Sergeant. Okay, so we've given that a little bit of time to dry now. The next stage is going to be our Space Wolf's head and hair. I'm going to start off with the hair, and I'm going to go for like a blonde sort of effect, a dirty blonde effect with this. And to do this, I'm going to use Xandra dust. I've got my Citadel detail brush here, and we're just going to go straight in with the Xandra dust straight onto the model itself. Now, what you need to do is try and pick out, obviously, with a Space Wolf, you've got quite a lot of hair on an actual Space Wolf. They've usually got beards and things. Now this guy, he's actually got quite long sideburns and then quite a big sort of moustache. It goes around his mouth, like almost a little beard type thing that goes around. We'll paint that. It doesn't matter, as I say, same way as with the eyes. Doesn't matter at this stage if it goes if we go over any of the skin areas, because we haven't done the skin yet, so we can go straight onto that afterwards and tidy it all up. Okay, so that's the Xandra dust applied. Now the next stage to this is to pop on an Agrax Earthshade, and then go back over the top with the Xandra dust to highlight the edges of his hair. We need to obviously wait for that to dry, so we'll leave that for now, and then we'll come back when it's dry and we'll go into the Agrax Earthshade. Okay guys, so we've given that plenty of time to dry now, so we're going to go straight on for the hair now with the Agrax Earthshade, just to darken that down a little bit and add a little bit of detail to it. So to pop this on the model, we're going to use a small detail brush, the Army Painter Hobby small detail brush now. So same way as we did with the blue glaze earlier. So to apply this, you're just popping it straight on. You want to make sure you're getting, because it's not a wash brush as such, it might be a little bit harder to get it to get it to actually stay on the brush because it's so thin. But just pop it all over the areas that we've done there. And what it'll do, it'll just add that level of shading in. Now again, we don't have to worry too much about getting this on the head and on the skin areas because we haven't done that yet. So we'll leave that to dry, and then we'll come back and we'll highlight that and start on the face. Okay, so we've given that a little bit of time to dry now, and you can see it's already looking quite good. So we're going to add a quick highlight of Xandra dust now, just to finish that off. So we're going to use the Citadel Games Workshop detail brush for this. You just want to get a nice little tiny amount on your brush and just go around the edges. Just highlighting all the edges of the hair now, just making that the light those bits stand out as they do naturally. There we have it. It's got his hair done. It looks a little bit strange at the moment because it's against the backdrop of grey, which we're now about to change. So we'll be now moving on to the actual face itself and the head. So to start off, we'll use Bugman's Glow, which is sort of like a darker glow, like a tan skin or tan base flesh sort of a colour. We'll start off with this one here, just to give it a good base coat. So we'll put that just off the screen there so we can mix it in our palette. So again, we're going to use the Citadel detail brush for this one. Just make sure you get a nice point on your brush, and you may need to do 2 coats of this. Just because it might not cover the model itself, but it is quite a good quality paint, quite a good quality base paint, so you should get a decent coverage on there. And we are going over the top of this, so try not to put too much on again because we don't want to lose that detail. Okay, so there we have it. That's the base coat on the face itself. And you can quite happily leave it at this stage. I mean, you look at the face there, and it's looking pretty good. You don't necessarily have to go into any more detail than this, but I do want to have it. I want it lighter. I want a lighter look to the skin itself. So I am going to go in there with the Cadian flesh tone. To do that, we are going to have to give it a little bit of time though, just to dry, because we need to make sure that that's all dry before we go onto any other colours with that now. So we'll leave it for a little while, and then we'll come back. Okay guys, we're giving that a little bit of time to dry now, so we're ready to move on with the next stage for our face. To do that, we're going to use Cadian flesh tone. You see, this is quite a gloopy paint at the moment. It's a fairly new one, this, that I've picked up, so I do need to water this down on the palette just off the screen there. So we'll do that now. Try and get a really nice point for this as well on your brush. Best one is one that you can. So you don't want to be losing any or going over any areas that we don't want to on this. There we go. That's the Cadian flesh tone all applied now. So that's all. That's the face nicely detailed now. Now what I'm going to do is go straight over the top of that with a Raglan flesh shade, just in the areas where we want to get a little bit of shade, just on the actual face. So maybe around the eyebrows, a little bit on around the back of the head, just on the chin and around his nose there. We are just going to put a little tiny bit of shade onto there, just to finish this guy off. To do that, we are going to use the Citadel detail brush again, to get this detail, these small areas of detail, because we don't want a lot of this shade going on there at all, especially around the eyes. The last thing we want is this to drip into the eyes by mistake. So just probably just on the top of the head there, around the eyebrows, just on his brow. It's always a darker area, just around the nose and underneath the eyes around his cheeks there. Now all you're doing is just getting a little tiny bit on your brush, just touching it onto the model in these areas. That's going to take quite a while to dry again, because with it being a shade. So we'll leave that for a little while, and then we'll just pick out a couple of details just on the top of his nose and that with the Cadian flesh tone. Okay, there we have it. That's the shade dry. So I'm just going to pop a titchy little bit of Cadian flesh tone just on the bridge of his nose, just to give it a little bit of definition. Maybe a little bit just on the cheeks there. Just on the forehead. Now you can see I've not putting a lot on there at all. And there we have it. That's the face done. That's that complete, and that's a really quick and easy way. It's the easiest way I found actually of getting your bareheaded troops to look good. So the final detail is to highlight the actual armour of the model. We'll do that with Administratum Grey, and it's literally just touching anywhere the light catches. We've also got Eshin Grey as well, just to go over the top of the pistol itself. So we'll pop that on the Eshin Grey on the pistol now. Just water this down a little bit, just on the palette there, getting a nice point on your brush, and we're just catching the raised areas of the pistol, which there is only a couple of, but it does just make that difference. So that's that with the Eshin Grey, and the final detail is doing exactly the same thing with the armour with Administratum Grey. To do this, all we're doing is watering it down in the same way as we've done with the previous ones, just on our palette. Just adding a little bit to the palette with a little bit of water on, getting that nice point on your brush itself, and then moving it just along the areas where the light would catch. Okay guys, so that's the model all dry now. All the paint is all dry on him. So the last stage is to work on some decals, just on the two shoulder pads and across his chest there, because he's the sergeant. We're going to give him an extra little one. Now I've picked up the Space Wolf decal sheet from Forge World, which is absolutely amazing. It's got some awesome decals on here for different bits and pieces, and it's great for vehicles and things, all the bigger bits as well. You can see I've cut a few bits out ready to do this, so I'll pop this aside now, and then we'll make a start on putting the decals on this guy. Okay, so as you can see, we've got the Microsol and Microset out ready, and we're going to be using those for doing this rather than just use the water. Okay, so the first step in doing this is to put the actual wet the decals themselves in some water. This particular decal here I've cut a little bit extra so I could just hold this one in, but I have got the tweezers there just to help me get it off and things. So you just hold it in the water for about 20-30 seconds or so, just so it softens and it can come off. Okay, so we'll give that a go and see if that'll come off now. Yeah, it slides off quite nicely. So what I want to do is just slide it off, just to use a little tool. I've got a little pair of scissors here, I've got my tweezers and things as well. Just slide it off onto where you want to apply it. So you don't have to be exact with this, because we're going to use the microsol and microset to help us. So first off, you've got the microset here. Now, the best thing to do is try and move it into as close a position as possible as to where you want it. Remember, this is just the water that we've got on there at the moment. Now we get a little bit of microset, and we can just put that all over the model with a nice clean brush, just covering the whole thing. And what this will do, it'll soak into the actual decal itself over the next couple of minutes and allow us to manipulate it a little bit more. Okay, so to prepare the areas for the other shoulders, we are going to put a little bit of microset just on the shoulder pads there, just to help us manoeuvre the next bits around that we actually put on there. So we've got a squad marking, and we've got the chapter marking as well, or the legion marking rather, with these particular figures. So that's a little bit on there now. Now I'm going to do the left shoulder pad to start with the legion wolf head, the red wolf. So just going to hold it again for about 30 seconds. Okay, so that's sliding off now. So what we'll do is just hold it against closest to the model as you can, and just slide it off and into place. Pop your little bit aside that you don't need. Now use your tweezers or a little pair of scissors or something, just to move that around and into place. It's moving quite freely. Get a little bit of your microset on there, just to help manipulate it and help this legion symbol just move around and move into place a little bit easier. It just needs to go slightly over towards the left and spin. There we go. And just pop a little bit more microset on here now, and leave that just to soak into the decal, same way as we did with the front one, just for a couple of minutes. And you can see now it's starting to bubble slightly at the edges. All we do, move it around slightly, just with your nice soft brush. You can use a soft cloth for this, just to manipulate it and soften the areas and push it all into place. I like using this. I've got this really soft hobby brush from Umbro, one of the Airfix brushes that I don't use for painting anymore, but it's ideal for using it for decals. Just pop a little bit more on that side there, and then we'll get our third and final decal. So again, we'll hold it for about 30 seconds or so. There we go, that's moving nicely now, just on the paper. So again, just hold on to the corner of it and slide it gently off and into place. Use your little brush with a little bit of microset just over the top of the decal itself. You can manipulate that and move it round slightly. There we go. So again, you just want to repeat this process just on each of the decals that you put in place till it looks fairly soft. You can see it'll bubble up a little bit just around, especially on the shoulder pads themselves, because they're curved, and the decals obviously off a flat piece of paper or a piece of card, so it's not necessarily natural for it to form over this curve of the shoulder pad. What the microset and microsol do is soften it enough to be able to do exactly that. So I'll just move this one around slightly. It just needs a little bit more help just to get it into place. I'll just use these scissors here. So we'll just give that a couple of minutes to work its magic now, and then we'll pop a little bit of microsol on there. Okay, so we've let that soak in now, and it's started to dry off a little bit. Now, the microsol you put on is the sort of last stage. This will soften it really, really well, so much so that any sort of knock will actually rip the decal. So you've got to be really careful when using this one. Now, the only time I actually use the microsol is as a last sort of stage to mould these decals over any curved areas and just seal it essentially seal the decal, because even the slightest knock with this stuff will move it around. You don't want to be putting it on with it and then for it just to rip and tear and have to start over again. So just popping it on all of these decals now. Just giving it a complete coverage, smoothing them out. Not trying to move them as such, just essentially wetting them with this solution. Okay, so we'll give that a little bit of time to dry and then I'll show you the results. Okay, the decals are now dry. The Microset and Microsol have done their stuff and they're looking absolutely fantastic. Hopefully you can see on the image, but what I'll do, I'll get some really good photos taken of it and we'll get them just at the end of the video here. You can see all those decals now, just the one on the chest and the two shoulder pads are now fixed in place and they're looking pretty fantastic. Such a great, quick and easy method of getting your decals on there. Really pleased with this guy. Hope you like the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share the video, get us out there. We are just really keen to show you the easiest ways to get your models painted and on the tabletop. Any questions at all, please feel free to put it in the comments. I'll answer anything you've got to ask. And that's it, so I hope to see you next time.